Afternoon, everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. First on our agenda is a special session, our 71st. Is there a motion to go into special session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to go into special session? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The first thing that we will be considering is the approval of a resolution authorizing an amendment to the financial incentive agreement with Dynamark Monitoring, Inc.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for mayor and council approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of amendment to the financial incentive agreement with Dynamark Monitoring, Inc. in connection with its expansion and creation of new jobs. The amendment provides a one-year extension of the agreement. The city's financial incentive is offered in partnership with incentives provided by the state of Maryland and Washington County.
Second.
I think I heard Marty's voice first. So we on a motion made by Mr. Alshire and seconded by Mr. Brubaker. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Excuse me. The next item is approval of a Maryland Smart Energy Communities Grant Agreement.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for the city to participate in the Maryland Energy Administration's Maryland Smart Energy Communities Program by authorizing staff to execute agreement number 2015-04-320S1. The city will receive $65,612 in grant funds that will be used to promote energy efficiency and conservation in city parks and recreation buildings. A condition of the grant is the Maryland City Council will review and approve energy conservation-related policies by November 2, 2015.
I'll second that one.
Motion made by Mr. Metzner, seconded by Mr. Munson. Any discussion?
Yes, I appreciate, Rodney, you laying this out. And the sense of this is that we're not getting ourselves into expenditures that we can't afford, that this really sets the stage to do what energy conservation things we can do. I support energy conservations, but I don't want to be bound or locked into something, numbers that I don't see here.
Right. I've really tried to vet that through the program to find out, when we pass these policies later this year, what exactly does that mean? And they keep telling me they're aspirational in nature, that we're going to seek to try to be more energy efficient. That's like a no-brainer. To seek to have a fleet of vehicles that is more energy efficient, those kind of things. But we're striving for those things is how they keep wording it to me. One thing about entering this program is it also enables us to go after additional grants to help meet some of those goals. So it sets us up for that.
Great. Any other discussion on the motion made by Mr. Metzner, seconded by Mr. Munson? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
5-0. Thank you. There was one additional item added to the special session, the approval of a workers' compensation insurance, excess insurance, third-party administration, and surety bond. For timing reasons, it was felt best to add today's special session.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for mayor and council's approval of the following three purchases as required by the Maryland Workers' Compensation Commission to implement the city's self-insured workers' compensation program. The program was previously approved by mayor and council on October 28, 2014. These three purchases include the following: excess workers' compensation liability insurance, $136,477. Workers' compensation self-insurance TPA services, $32,040. Workers' compensation security deposit bond, $38,100.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So the way that I read these three things that we need to do, they will not infringe on the expected savings that we anticipate moving to this program.
No, we're, the one item on here, the surety bond requirement, was an additional expense, but we're modifying the loss control end to make up the difference in
You're going to
that.
absorb it into that.
Right.
That's what I read. Okay. And that's that 36,000 or whatever.
The security bond is the 38,100.
Yeah.
And it is covered in the budget.
Yes,
Yeah, that's why.
yes.
And the program begins July 1.
Right.
It's a
Correct.
self-insured
Yeah.
program.
Any other discussion, questions, feedback? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. That will conclude our special session, and we will move on into our work session. First item of which is the Hagerstown Police Department grant applications. So welcome the chief to the table.
And while the chief's coming up, if I could just say, I realize this is a difficult issue in some ways for mayor and council in light of your recent budget discussions. But we felt that because of the potential of getting grant funds for additional officers, it was a question or issue that should come before the mayor and council. So we're respectful of the deliberations you had up until 2 weeks ago on the budget in reference to staffing for city operations, but thought we ought to at least bring this to your attention.
Thanks. Chief.
Thank you. And Bruce is correct. Last year, we applied for this grant. We came before council and got approval to apply for a similar cops hiring grant. We did not receive the grant. We were too far down on the list. However, in the past, we have received 2 of these cops hiring grants for 7 officers total that are on the street now and working. Some of those are military preference grants, and these are as well. In other words, you have to hire at least 1 post 9/11 veteran, and then you have to make an effort to hire additional post 9/11 veterans. Anybody that served for a number of days active service since 9/11. So, and we have several of those on our ranks now, and this grant would place an emphasis on that and a requirement for at least 1. But what I brought before you today, we're always on the lookout for additional grant opportunities for the city, and I know the timing always seems terrible to ask for more funding. There is a match that goes along with this, and it's a significant match. It's 25%, but there's a 1-year retention. But the 2 programs that are available to us to apply this year, and for what I'm seeking approval are, the first one is basically an old-fashioned walking post. So it's a neighborhood policing extension. These officers would work in our neighborhoods. I listed 3 of our neighborhoods that are having the most trouble. However, the other 3 officers could service any community anywhere throughout the city or help support these officers. So the goal would be 40 hours a week. These officers would be in our community, walking around, engaging the community. They would be working a 5-8 hour shift because it's hard to walk a lot longer than that. And I think that would get us a lot of contact with the community. They'd be working in the evenings and afternoons when they can have the most contact with the youth, with the parents, that sort of thing. And then the style of policing is problem-solving policing, which is walking around, finding out what the problems are, and then working to solve those problems. So that's the gist of the first one, which is the Community Policing Development Grant. Any questions about that one?
And I think the questions aren't so much the function of the officers and the way you would administer them as, it's a significant amount of money and outlay, even at the 25% level. I
agree.
guess that's the issue. I go back and forth on this because it's, we just did a budget, as Bruce said, and this is, a pretty significant add. And then in the retention year, you're talking about a 2.5 cent impact that somehow we'd have to cover for, I guess it's the 4th year out. Yeah, it's the fourth year out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But that's assuming we were to
If we got
apply
both.
for both.
Well, the
apply for
2.5,
both,
but
right?
it's, what we get would be somewhere between 0 and 2.5
That-
cents
yeah,
impact.
I totally agree with that.
Right. So the second program, just real briefly, is just as is outlined there in the paragraph. It's to extend our school resource officers. And both these programs are designed to hit what's nationally going on, which is community, the trust with police and the community. So we feel both these programs do it. The first one does it at home and with a bit older and also the adults in the community. The second program is an extension of the school resource officers. Would put officers in 2 of our middle schools, and then our new elementary school in the West End, or in Hager's Crossing, rather. And unique part about both these programs is even the school resource officers will get out beyond the boundaries of the school and get into the community. In other words, they would work beyond the hours of the school, engaging the kids at home. Both programs also, we're going to be placing an emphasis in our grant, if we're able to apply for it, on language skills and diversity skills within the officers. And diversity goes beyond just racial boundaries. It goes into culture, and it goes into the economics. You know, some of our communities are a bit poorer than others, so the officers would get training specifically to deal with the different diverse neighborhoods that they're working in, and if whatever language skill might be relevant in that community. Spanish would be obviously a first one, but if someone's working in Hager's Crossing, it could be Russian language skills, just to break into that demographic that we have in that community. That's about a 30% diverse population just in Hager's Crossing. It's because it's a newer development, a lot of influx there. So that's the gist of both those programs are designed. The underlying issue is building trust in the community, getting in contact with them, and being out of the police cars and in the schools and walking in the neighborhoods. I think it would have a significant impact on you know, building trust in the community, reducing crime, reducing the fear of crime. Now, as far as the council considers if either of the programs to fund, I've got them in priority for me, which is the neighborhood program and then the school program. And the neighborhood program, we can apply up to 6 officers. So if the council considers is still you know, having difficulty with the funding, we could back that off a bit. I wouldn't like to go any lower than 4 because I still want to hit our 3 primary neighborhoods and then have one officer at least to help support those. So those are the options, 1, both, and then we could adjust the numbers. So I bring that before council. I don't bring a checkbook with it. I just bring a big request.
And
So-
Mark, you might just cover the numbers on the second page.
Yes, sir.
Just to make
Can I
sure
just
everybody's
comment, I think I do have a potential funding solution for the second option. I mean, we don't have any school resource officers that the Board of Education isn't contributing to, do we?
It's
No.
basically 3/4 of the cost, right? It's
Right.
covered by the board.
Right.
So it would be unreasonable to ask them to pay for the quarter of the cost of a police officer, which would cover the entire expense we would have? They're paying 40% now. Bruce, you well know that if you came to me, if we had the manpower and you came to me and asked me for this and asked the city to bear 100% of the cost of the student school resource officer, I'd vote against it. And the reason I've been supportive of it is because the board has picked up 3/4 of the expense. Now, we have the ability to put 3 officers in schools, at least 3 officers, with the potential to have the board say they'll pick up that 25% match, which is substantially less than they're paying. That would get us the school resource officers at least up to the time of the retention year without any expense at all to us. I agree with your priorities, Chief. I definitely believe that you have the priorities correct, but this came to me as a thought process how to fund something, because I think we all agree if we could get the school resource officers at no expense, we would probably do it, wouldn't we?
I could certainly approach the board if I get support for that program from council. I could go back and approach the board quick and Board of Ed and see about that. Of course, it's mid-year for them. It would be picked up maybe next year's budget. I know that,
It's the same group that's coming asking us for $1 million for downtown, right? So, and the other thing I will say, because eventually that discussion is going to come up. Okay, and as we're talking about school resource officers, we've just finished a really difficult budget time. And our city administrator, whose last meeting is tonight, has tried to send us a message for years, which is the way we're doing things can't continue. And he's made it clear that you gotta do one of 2 things. Either gotta stop funding some things, or you gotta create more revenue. And as this council starts discussing, instead of closing back onto arenas we fund, to open up a brand-new funding arena that has never been in the history of cities, to my knowledge, which is the funding of education, and which what we're being asked to do candidly down the road is to save the county apparently some $80 million by us giving them $1 million. Having said that, that's why I said I would oppose the school resource officers if, right now, if we were paying 100% of their salary, and that's the position I've always taken. So I think that we need to make sure that when we go to the board, we make clear that, you know, that's the reason school resource officers are there. I suspect that they came to us and said, we're not gonna pay anything for them anymore, that they probably wouldn't be in the schools.
And the retention year is the real stickler, because that's when the impact really hits. And the
Right.
feds aren't picking up 75% of it.
Correct.
Well, under those circumstances, I mean, I think we need to move forward there. That's like, kind of like getting a freebie, at least until the fourth year.
If we can get that, if
Yeah.
we can get their agreement on that, I would like to think we could.
So,
That's something I can
we
do.
clarify what what exactly we're asking?
For the board to do the match, we have to do a 25% match, what, right?
Correct.
Right now, we have our employees in the schools,
Sure.
and the board is matching 75% of their salary.
Right.
We would ask them to match this match, not the retention year. The retention years we would have to deal with. Although I would tell you, what I would be telling the schools, if they decided that they were not going to do the 60-40 with those officers, I would probably find some way to reassign or do something with them. But I could live with 4 years free, even dealing with the retention year.
Any other thoughts from council members on this proposal?
Let me, well, I think it's a no-brainer to support that part. It's a freebie. And at least that's my view of that part. But the other part, which is your favorite part, Chief, and frankly, the one that would seem to do the most good for us, how much money, I mean, Lou really brings up a good point, Marty, about the costs. And how much money would be required to come up, would we be required to come up with out of the next budget? Out of the budget that we're in, out of the budget that we just passed? For this
each-
program?
For each year, for this year?
Yeah.
For the 6 officers.
Well, I just multiplied 6
Yeah,
times.
for the six, the top
I
one.
rounded that to 60,000, multiply it times 6, that's 360, right, first year?
It'd be 25% of that,
Right,
360.
and then took 25% of that,
Right.
yeah.
So we're looking at a little under $100,000, around 80,000 for the first year.
I'm sorry, but yes.
If- Did I
Yeah,
do the math right?
Yeah.
For 6 officers.
well, 90,000.
So we're talking 55,000 for
25%
4
for
officers.
69, yeah.
$90,000 then for the first.
Right,
for
so
the
we're
first
talking
year.
60,000 for 4 officers. 2/3 of that.
Roughly, yes, sir.
Right.
I'd have to get you hard numbers.
As
I'm
bad
sorry, I
as
didn't
we-
break
as
it down by
bad as we
year.
need cops. Let me ask you this, if we got officers, could we anticipate getting experienced officers? I mean, there must be some police agencies, police departments that are losing officers because of what they're going through that might want to come to Hagerstown
Yeah,
and get jobs.
We're recruiting seasoned officers as we can get them. We just had one start this past 2 weeks ago. We had a new one start. He's a seasoned officer. And we're actually going down to Ocean City recruiting some of their summer help, which some of those guys, the seasonal officers are they got a year or so under their belt already. They've been back for a couple of years. So we're heavily recruiting. We are.
When do you have to,
And
when do you have to apply by?
we have to apply by June 19th. We have a very short window on these things. I wish they gave us more time.
When's the award?
Right, that's a better question.
And we're looking at.
I wanna
we're
say
have
it's-
Pick these people up in January, which means it's really half of that 25% for the current fiscal year.
I wish I knew. I want to say the cops hirings are September.
That's what sticks out in my mind too, September.
I don't have
So
an
it's
answer on
probably
that.
60 to.
If
somewhere
it's
between
federal, they
45 to
don't, their
90,000,
fiscal year doesn't start till
depending on where-
October, so
That's
that
right.
would make sense that they'd make
Then
the
you gotta
award
get
in
more.
September.
So it's really not September, it's more like October, November.
It takes at least a 3 to 6 month window to start to hire them. In fact, the current cops hiring grant that we're on right now, we're on an 18-month extension because it took us 18 months to get the full staff of 5 hired. It took time, so it
Reality
takes.
will be halfway through the next fiscal year, since we're not to July yet, to be hit with that expense.
We would be
for
looking to.
FY '16?
Right, at worst case scenario, we would put 6 officers directly in the academy in January. So your costs may start in January, even if we pass this in
With
September.
$40,000.
So,
Chief, I'm assuming that under the retention, the question I'm asking, does our sworn officer force have to be, maintain the same level as it is now once these officers are hired? Meaning, I'm not saying that we would lay off in 4 years 4 officers, but I can envision a scenario if budget times were tight where positions wouldn't be filled, to be able to pay for this for some other administration down the road. I don't want to get us into a position, however, that if we, for instance, got 4 officers under this grant, that would force us to maintain the same number of officers until this grant ran out, under the theory that if we didn't maintain the same force, we really weren't retaining these officers.
I think the overall intent is that we would maintain those. However, I know we're working through some realities with that. Currently, we have 7 COPS hiring grant positions on our books, but I have 4 vacancies right now. So we report those quarterly, and we're very transparent about that as far as we're constantly trying to refill those 7 positions. So they know that we're running on this vacancy deficit at all times. It's hard to stay full at 108 where we're at.
And I understand that.
But to give you a correct the safe answer is yes, you'd be required to maintain at any position that you got. However, the reality is, through vacancies, Michelle budgets vacancy savings into our budget. So that the grant understands that. The grant does not, they would not want us to, hire them and then turn around and reduce the same amount. They would consider that supplanting. Of course, we
And
know-
I
and we know
understand that,
about
because it would be,
Right.
it would be.
Yeah.
That would be, and that would not be my
Is
intent.
there a hardship cost? I don't know. I don't know if Michelle's in here. I don't know if you can file a hardship letter that, in other words, we're able to, not
Right.
able to fulfill our budget requests. I could get an answer on the hardship response. In other words, if we couldn't meet our budget obligations, we ran into a crisis and we had to reduce force. I understand your position. We don't want to have to be locked in here.
And
Can we file a hardship letter?
One last question, which probably is the most important one at all. There is one issue about applying for a grant, another issue about it being given to us and then us accepting it. By the application process, are we bound to accept it if it's given to us? Do you know?
I wouldn't think so, but I can get you an answer on that. I've never
Because
experienced
if
that.
the answer to that was we wouldn't be, I would certainly want to apply for at least 4 officers in the first group, and I think we've already had discussion about this 4 resource officers, if we could come to the right.
Lou, if that's the situation, we ought to go ahead and apply for the 6 officers, because we can probably back down to 4.
My problem is, I don't see us being able to afford
Well,
6, so I don't.
that's a good point.
And so I'd be leery of asking for more than we know we aren't going to afford, because I'm assuming it doesn't necessarily do you good in the grant process to apply for it, get it, and then don't take it. That would be my guess. But if we had to, we could always do that. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't ask for more than 4 in the first arena, because I just don't see how we can afford
It's
it.
the retention year that
Yeah,
becomes
the
issue.
burden, the
It comes
burden
up,
becomes immense.
Did you sit down with Michelle about this and see if there was any possibilities that maybe we didn't think of?
On revenue sources?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we talked about it with her. She's out today, but, we don't have any identified funding sources for the local match either in the coming year or in the retention year. It would be something that'd have to be worked through in the course of the budget process.
Well, Lou put his finger on a $64,000 issue. If you apply and do not have to accept it, I think we need to apply. If you apply and have to accept it,
Well, I'll support going for the 4 positions for the first category, and if we can work something out with the school board, on the other three.
I'll approach them immediately and talk to
Yeah,
them.
and part of that discussion needs to be their commitment on the after years and the retention
retention
years
year.
to continue
Yeah.
to have the type
Yeah.
of split that we
Well,
have
it's the
now.
retention year and beyond,
Right,
actually.
right, exactly.
Personally, I think that the way we've had a revolving door at the police department because of salaries still not really being where they should be, so we do have vacancies, and the vacancies have been a run on that. I don't have a problem with the 6, only because I see those vacancies still. We're gonna have that swinging door going in and out, but if the council wants 4, that's fine. But I know that they've not been happy, you know? There's officers that have come in here thinking that it's gonna be, and it's not, so they're out. So I think that we have the ability there to hopefully bring in what we have and be able then to keep what we have. I'm hoping, because we certainly can't lose many more.
Can the money that we receive from the state for policing be utilized for the cost of this to us?
That'd be the highway user revenue that we receive from
No,
the
police.
Police protection.
police
Yeah,
police protection area.
yeah.
Well, it's my understanding that does go directly to support the police department, so if the state were nice enough to increase that level, then that would be a revenue source, but it's not a guarantee for me.
Okay, so is there any possibility of getting some kind of a grant that would support a different grant from someplace that would support the cost of what we're talking about?
I think the short answer is no. I don't know of any that could help support this.
But the state aid for police protection, it adjusts, the way I understand it, it adjusts pursuant to the calculations that you provide each year. In other words, it isn't flat each year. It
For
adjusts-
staffing?
Yeah, you take your total amount, and then they apply their percent to it. Whatever percent they set for you for that, or for municipalities for that particular year.
But it would be less than a 4%.
Oh, it's gonna be some small piece of
Increase
it.
and 4% of, what, 100,000 or something like that. So it wouldn't be
No.
enough to do a match, yeah.
No, it's gonna cover some small part. I'm fine with the 4. I'm fine with the 4. I mean, if you drop it down, you're looking at fourth year retention at about 240 instead of 390. And your share drops to 60, and really, it's really 30 for the first year is what I'm figuring, you know, by the time you get them hired. So what that is at the end of the day is a single penny.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it, too.
So it sounds like the consensus is go for the 4
Yeah.
for the first grant and go for the school resource officers if there's some kind of indication that the school board might want to do the match.
Correct.
And then continue the match, the current level of match for the current school resource officers after the retention year is over.
Right, I think even in a fourth year retention year, they should do the same model that we're doing now currently, which is that
Right.
it's 37.5 now
Right.
per officer. I did ask for an increase in that last year out of their budget, and I didn't get that, but I'll be going back to them anyway next year to
Okay.
increase that as well, so.
So with the timing, it's due on the 19th. Do
Yeah.
you want us to come back to address any of the questions that were raised today, or can Mark go ahead and submit the application?
I don't have any questions.
I would think you
You're
should
good
go
to
ahead and
go?
submit. Yeah.
Let them negotiate.
We'll do
I guess the school thing you'd have to.
Yeah, we
Right.
don't know for
Bring
sure
back.
on the school at this point.
I'll have to communicate back with you on that.
Yeah. Go
Okay.
for it.
And do you need a formal motion next week to apply? Do they require a motion of the council?
No, I just think that's an internal process we have.
So we're okay with
to-
what we've done
To bring all
today.
our grants to the board.
Okay.
I just hope with the school board that there's enough of that board that's gonna be thinking soundly. Because as it's going now, it's like, it's almost a split, and that would really hurt. And they have to realize it's their schools too. So, yeah.
Yeah, they've been working with us on getting the data, and we applied last year for a similar school grant, and it didn't come through. It was going to be a 100% match, but
Right. Well,
Didn't
like
come
I
through.
said,
Last year was not our year
it's
for
beginning to
grants.
be a split there, so just hopefully they've got their minds where it needs to be.
And
because
then
the
we'll make
schools are
sure that we
certainly.
notify our federal partners that we've applied for this grant too, so they can put in a good word for us.
Yeah, we've already been in contact with them to see if it, and they're willing to support us, so, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. All right, we're doing a good job of staying on track on time-wise. We have our CDBG Public Service Funding Allocations and Planning Documents update.
Good evening.
evening.
Last week, we were here to discuss the CDBG planning documents with our consultants, Urban Design Ventures. Those planning documents, which are required to be submitted to HUD for us to obtain our annual entitlement of the block grant funding, are known as the 5-year consolidated plan, the annual action plan, and analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And to continue that discussion this evening, we wanted to give the mayor and council an opportunity to review the public service funding allocations through the CDBG program, and then also discuss the CDBG planning documents before they would be approved during the June 23rd regular session. And a few years ago, this mayor and council created a CDBG Public Service Review Committee, and I'll let Sarah Nelson describe that committee and how that process works, and then we'll go over the recommendations for CDBG public service funding.
Sure. It has 3 mayor and council appointed members, so a representation from the Neighborhoods First program, a low to moderate income, a resident of the city, and a member of the faith community. And applications are ranked based on the mayor and council established priorities, which are healthcare, elderly care, and youth care, as well as CDBG priorities, and they look at sustainability and impact and collaboration of the different organizations, and they're given a breakdown to be able to rank applications based on that. So what you're looking at on your spreadsheet in the left-hand column is the rankings that the citizens gave them, that staff, then a team of staff, including the finance director, the planning director, and Jonathan, the community development manager, review those and make sure they look consistent with our planning documents, and then we move forward with making the recommendations to mayor and council. And final approval is always made by mayor and council. So that's why we're here tonight, to review what we got in.
So as you can see on the spreadsheet, the funding scenario to the right-hand column, the very far right-hand column for fiscal year 16 is very similar to fiscal year 15. It's actually exactly the same except for one difference from FY15. And the committee had ranked a Community Action Council program. It's a new program that they're starting next year for financial literacy. The committee had ranked them just a little bit higher than a program that we had previously funded through Food and Friends. So that's one difference I would want to highlight for the mayor and council. As you can see, the other funding allocations mirror what was funded in FY15 to Community Free Clinic, the Children in Need program, the Girls Incorporated Supper program, Senior Living Alternatives, also known as Holly Place, and once again, the difference being the Community Action Council funding flip-flop with Food and Friends. So with that said, we wanted to see if the mayor and council had any questions on that or any recommendations for edits on that as well, because we can still make changes to this prior to the June 23rd adoption of the plan.
Was HNDP on there the last time?
They had requested funding last time for the fair housing counseling, but they were not provided any funding through CDBG for their public service counseling. We will discuss here in a few minutes. They do receive funding for a down payment and settlement assistance program
Right,
through the allocator of the
right.
budget.
Now, do you all handle at your location the fair housing? Because I know that you all were taking on some of that role that they had too.
We also have some programs, I guess, that mirror some of their down payment programs, but different target populations. And as far as fair housing, they do handle the fair housing counseling. We are, by regulation, are required to make sure we're affirmatively furthering fair housing through that document known as the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. But as far as the counseling, we don't provide any fair housing counseling. They actually do counseling directly to clientele.
How do
Did all these folks apply? Is that what?
That's
and
correct.
These are the only ones? that
The only
applied?
ones that applied, which fall in our public service categories. In a few minutes, I'll hand out a breakout of the actual CDBG annual action plan allocations, and I'll note that there are 2 agencies that request funding that don't fall under the public services. Those are some of our standard programs we funded for years, which is the H&DP down payment program, and then also the Commission on Aging elderly grant repair, or excuse me, a grant program for repairs for elderly senior citizen homes.
Is the fair housing, is that linked to the counseling that the people go into when they are possibly about to look at buying a home?
I think there are different counseling
Because I know they
components.
do that,
I
and
think
I
they
know
do.
that that has been very effective, and that's my question. I don't know.
I think it's different. I think there is a component, and don't quote me on this, but I believe they have a home buying education component. And then there would be separate fair housing counseling when it comes to making sure there's no discrimination related to fair housing laws.
Okay.
Now, there may be some sprinkling of the fair housing during a home buyer education, but I don't think they're the exact same thing.
Okay.
And I believe.
I just have to see, because that's, that has been a very important part. I know people that have gone through all of that, but I don't know if it's, part of that is in there or not.
Continue.
Yeah, and just making sure if there's no suggestions, these will be the public service allocations then. That
Any
will be part of the
objections from the council?
action plan for June 23rd approval. With that said, to further discuss the CDBG planning documents, this was handed out last week as well when our consultants were here. These programs slated for FY 2016 through the CDBG program were also reflected in our budget book during the budget approval process. I just wanted to give the mayor and council a rundown once again, because we have 2 programs there that are funded that are outside agencies. Once again, H&DP is funded for a down payment assistance program, and also the Commission on Aging is funded for a grant program that funds repairs for senior citizens who own their homes. All of the other programs in the FY16 CDBG budget are very similar to previous years. I would just point out some of the capital improvement projects that are different this year include a project that's being handled by Parks and Engineering, which includes crosswalk and street improvements at Potomac Street and Antietam Street in front of the library. And a newer program we did start last year, we're including more funding for cellar door repair replacement, which we've had some of those already happen.
By the way, is awesome.
Yeah.
When we were doing a tour of the Alms House and we walked back and forth, that's turned out to be a really nice
Yes,
project.
much nicer for those walking. You feel, it looks better, it feels much safer. So that is also included again for FY16. We are also including funding again for code enforcement, to fund a part-time code enforcement inspector to help with some of the neighborhoods in the core for nuisance-type items. And once again, all the other programs essentially reflect the same programs we've been operating in the previous year budgets when it comes to grants for low, moderate income homeowners for emergencies, loan programs for homeowners for non-emergency items, but things still in need of rehabilitation, and also the public services that we just discussed. And with that said, we wanted to make sure the mayor and council were aware of these programs again, highlight them, and if there were any recommendations or edits, we could still do that before the June 23rd approval of the action plan.
This looks really good. Any questions or comments, feedback?
Good stuff. Good job.
Who is it that handles the single-family homeownership and that down, those 4? Who is it? What group is it that actually handles this?
Single-family homeownership and single-family homeownership administration, and
Yeah,
on the
where
front
is
page,
that? Yeah.
that's through our department, Community and
All of
Economic
this
Development.
is you?
Except the very
First.
top, yes.
Okay.
And that, the homeownership program funds, for instance, our acquisition that we just acquired 261 South Prospect Street and then the subsequent
Correct.
renovation.
Yeah.
The residential rental rehab loans, and also later on down the list, the single-family rehabilitation loans, that's also handled through our
Okay.
department. And through the HLRA, the Loan Review Authority.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, feedback?
So Jonathan, on the 23rd.
Yes.
You need mayor and council to approve the action plan and also the 5-year plan. There'd be 2 actions.
And also the analysis of impediments to fair housing
That's right.
choice. That's
So
a mouthful.
three
Yes.
total actions on the 23rd.
And did you send us the link to that, or it's on the website?
Yeah,
Yes.
and we can resend that.
Yeah, we can resend very large documents.
Yeah, yeah.
5-year plan.
Yes.
Okay.
We will do that.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Very good job. All right, next up is the Land Management Code Amendment Modification to Fence Height Revision Recommendation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're back on Land Management Code amendments. We were here in March and May to review what had been recommended to you by the Planning Commission. One of the items up for discussion was perhaps tweaking the proposed amendment to the fence height restrictions to make it more flexible. What's currently in the ordinance is if you're in a residential district, you can have a fence up to 6 feet tall on the side and rear property, side and rear setback, the side and rear yard. And then if you're just across the line in a commercial zone, you could have an 8-foot-10 fence. Just across the line in an industrial district, you could have a 10-foot fence. And we felt that it would be, for the planning commission's process, that if you have that situation, it should be even. So if you have the residential property, you should be able to have the same height fence as the adjoining industrially zoned fence or the adjoining commercially zoned fence. And so that's what went through the planning commission process and came here for recommendation. But based on the input that we received in March and May, we drafted some language that says that if you were still, if you were in a residential use property in a residential district, and we also added in mixed-use districts such as the downtown, and you adjoin industrially or commercially zoned property or non-conforming industrially or commercially used land, because we do have situations like that around town where there are properties in the residential areas that are not zoned that way. Sometimes they create a nuisance for residential properties, and so that's the way we worded it, that if you would join industrial commercially zoned land or a non-conforming industrially or commercially used property, then you could have the 8-foot or the 10-foot, whatever is appropriate for the commercial or the industrial situation. And so we took that to the planning commission. Steve worked with the planning commission at that meeting. You want to give them a little rundown on how that conversation went?
The wording that was proposed to them, which you've seen, they were good with. The one question or discussion that we had was, what about other non-residential uses that may be permitted in the district, such as churches, daycare centers, et cetera, which are actually permitted in those zoning districts. And the planning commission's position was that if the zoning allows the use, it's generally considered compatible. And if that's the case, then they should not receive the benefit of this provision to go to 8 or 10 feet tall. Because the ordinance basically presumes that that use is compatible. If it's compatible, then in general, there shouldn't be a need for additional fence protection.
But since we forwarded that recommendation to you after the planning commission's meeting, we've got some indication via email that there might be differing opinions on whether that is flexible enough. And so we're here today to see if you feel that what's come from the planning commission is appropriate or if it still needs to be tweaked further.
I wanted to, as I recall, there was a little bit of concern about non-conforming uses theoretically will be extinguished someday, leaving fences that are higher than otherwise would be necessary. But, the good outweighs the perfect, I think in this case, was the decision.
Yes.
And the non-conforming uses do tend to stick around for a long time, and you're not going to ask somebody to tear a fence down. So, but that was raised, and, again, people went along with this proposal.
And we have revised our ordinances within the last few years to make them much more accommodating to the continuance of nonconforming uses. So the rate at which these things will go into defunct status will slow down.
I just wanted to point that out, that people had done.
fact that I have no problem at all with this, but just why it got me here. It's been a little problem in our neighborhood under our definitions, and I understand why we have the definitions. I'd like to see if staff could do something, though, so that this, what we're looking at here, bear with me for a second.
And the one, the rear yard's the front yard.
Yeah, that's somebody's rear yard under our definition, and their backyard is clearly, it doesn't work, and you know where I'm talking about. And I'm thinking that some type of grandfather clause may be able to resolve that. Is what we have is issues where people have to pay money to prove that their backyard isn't their front yard and their front yard isn't their
I
backyard.
thought that wasn't an issue anymore, because I had 2 front yards as well, and it was,
You can have a front yard fence now if you're on a street, but there's a height limitation.
right.
And so you need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals if you want to get
Right,
like a
and-
screening
Yeah.
fence.
What we have is a provision in the ordinance right now where if the property that's your side yard or your back, if it runs across the back, such as the exhibit that Mr. Messner's showing here, if it's a higher classification road, in other words, you're on the quieter street, but your back is much more busier, it's much more visible from public ways, that provision doesn't apply, but you do have the ability to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a variance for it.
Right, but you shouldn't have to get a variance to establish that your backyard isn't your front yard. And where I'm talking about, so if anybody has any questions, that would be considered a backyard under our ordinance. And the reason is because these homes were built in the 40s and early 50s, and at the time, Security Road, Antietam Drive was a little, it wasn't even paved. So it backed to Security Road and fronts on the Potomac Heights. Then they came and put Eastern Boulevard through, and because of that, when you drive down Eastern Boulevard, all the homes that are in the city, their backyard that you're looking at under our ordinance is considered to be their front yard. So if they want to put a screening fence on Eastern Boulevard, yeah, they can get a variance. They have to pay money, they have to come down and do it. And I don't think any of our citizens should ever have to pay money or get a variance to establish that a strawberry is a strawberry instead of an apple or something like that. I understand why this has happened. Don't get me wrong. This is no criticism at all towards staff. North High and Pennsylvania Avenue, Monet Drive with the Sheol stuff on Pangborn Boulevard caused us as a council to change the definition. And we find out a lot of times when you enact statutes or definitions that you have unintended consequences. And this is an unintended consequence we hadn't thought about. I would like to see us be able to change that definition in such a manner that people would not have to seek variances. Or at least if they do, my understanding is a cost associated with that application. I don't think citizens should have, I'd like to see these people get reimbursed their money that had to pay a couple $100 to come down to establish that a backyard's a backyard. I understand why this has happened, and we in government understand why this has happened, but it's the kind of things that citizens don't understand. When you explain to them how it occurred, it's a different story. But again, it's a little not that relevant to what we're discussing tonight, but I thought since I had you here, it'd be a good time to bring it up.
If that's the will of this body, we can come up with some language would address that. I would point out that they are relatively limited circumstances. It's the example that you use is a relatively limited situation. If the back property or the street to the rear was another street in the residential neighborhood and not a higher classification, they wouldn't have run through that.
I totally agree. I mean, I completely understand how it happened and why it is. And an easy way to do it may be able to say that if at the time the property was constructed, that at that time it faced the primary road, then it could be grandfathered. But you all have the ability to write it. I don't know if my fellow council members agree that we should try to solve that, but.
I agree with it. I don't think we want a bunch of fences on Potomac Heights.
You go down Potomac Street, coming into town. There are homes of, at least one of which I think has a hedgerow. You can't see through that. That hedgerow must be 15 feet high.
Is that Vincent's property?
Right.
I don't know whose it
Yes,
is.
that's Vincent's.
Vincent's.
Whoever's it is.
It's Vincent's.
He just trimmed it a couple of days ago.
Did he? Yeah.
So here's an instance where you have a hedgerow doing exactly what a fence is doing. 3 times the height we'd allow a fence ever to be in a front yard, growing out into the public right-of-way. You can't even walk up the sidewalk at this point. And I go back to what you've attempted to do here is help, but when you add in language that says adjoining a non-conforming commercial or industrial use similar in character to what would be permitted in the CG, you place the onus again on the property owner to prove this, to go through a process to prove that that something in similar in character to what would be permitted. I mean, you're asking a homeowner to go through a pretty invested process with the answer lying completely in the city's hands. And I don't know why it should matter if it's a church or it's a gas station or what have you. I guess I just don't see it as an issue of necessary. For me, if a property owner wants to place an 8-foot fence to the side or rear of their property because there is a non-residential use adjacent to their property, I just don't see what's to prohibit it. And in fact, there are some places around the city that I've seen folks that have the 6-foot fence, and then they have the 2-foot section of lattice above it. So, I mean, folks are already doing these types of above 6-foot things.
If they were doing that, they were doing it without a zoning certificate that would have been approved by our office.
There's an 8-foot fence at the rear of the property on the one on South Prospect Street, and in the 300 block. I just went by it the other day. Went down through the alley, and I'd want an 8-foot fence back there too, because the junk that they have to look at across the alley is inappropriate for the peaceful enjoyment of their rear yard. I just for me, and I don't want an 8-foot fence, by the way, but for me, right behind my house, it slopes up in the rear yard, and so sitting sort of above me by about 6 feet is, I don't know, I guess it was an alarm company or something. I mean, the rear of that building is just over, the stuff overgrown into the alley now. And in fact, one of the trees is hanging down into the fence because my yard sits lower. I'm just using that as an example where, there's an example where just across the alley, there's a use that is non-residential in nature. But down the street from me, 6 houses down, there's a house that's surrounded by a hedgerow that must be 12 feet high. Even along, and it's right near the battery place and the rug place. There's a house right there that has a hedgerow. You can't even see the front of the house. And I guess I don't get why we have to make it, while we've tried to make it a little more flexible, it's still inflexible. For a person who owns, there's one up on Salem Avenue, I remember the case where they wanted to expand the bank services. I think they put in an additional drive-up lane. And I think at that time, we made them plant some additional plantings. What's the difference between that bank planting a row of Leland cypress that are going to grow, 18 feet high, and that homeowner being permitted to say, hey, there's a drive-through, bank right next to my house, and I have to, I endure that every day in my backyard because the cars come around the back of that lot, and I can't simply put up an 8-foot fence.
Well, with the way we've got this proposed, you would be able to.
You'd be able to do it. Yeah, but Kristen,
No, it says-
who would approve, who would make the determination that the use was similar in character?
The simplest way to do that is to do it through the zoning permit process for a fence, which would come across my desk as zoning administrator. And in the vast majority of the cases, it's a very simple visual observation type thing, such as the bank. We all know the bank's going to be there, that person's going to get their 8-foot fence in that particular situation. Nonconformities are pretty easy to identify in most cases. A bank, a store, a car dealership, or, used car lots, some of those are in residential zoning districts.
But it,
Service station.
but it
warehouse.
doesn't.
A service station, yeah.
But this language doesn't just end at adjoining a non-conforming commercial industrial use. I mean, it goes on to say similar in character and then list other zoning districts. I guess for me, I'm pretty cut and dry about it. If a residential property owner lives in a property that's adjoining a property that is not a residential use, I don't see why they
It's
wouldn't
written
be
that way because we've
able
got
to do that.
8 feet and 10 feet. The 8 feet is for the commercial types of things, and 10 feet is for the industrial types of things, which
Yeah.
is the way it's spelled. It's which why it gets a little awkward the way it's worded. It's because it's not, we're not saying if you're a residential property and you're adjoining anything, you can go up to 10 or whatever.
It
It's saying if
depends
you're
on what that
adjoining commercial, it's
non-conforming
8.
use is.
Yeah.
Correct. It's graded, it's graduated. If it's a commercial, adjacent commercial use, 8 feet. If it's adjacent industrial use,
And what I hear you saying is that it doesn't really place the onus on the person applying, that it would be a simple determination of the zoning administrator when they go and observe what the non-conforming use is. They sort of lump it into, okay, basically, is it not industrial? And if it's not industrial, you can get an 8-foot fence, and if it is industrial, you get a 10-foot fence.
that's correct.
So
And
that's the whole reason why you have use similar in character to what might be permitted in XYZ as opposed to
So that you know
industrial.
whether it's the 8 or the 10.
Right.
And I disagree that a school or a church is the same as a gas station or a warehouse. I think they are permitted uses in residential districts, so they're within that, and I don't think they should be included as automatic candidates for the.
And I hear what you're saying, but that is under the assumption that that church operates typically on Sundays. Folks, go to church and then they're there, and then they go home. But churches, let's face it, over the last, number of decades, churches have expanded their accessory use capability. Maybe a church that has 100 kids for a daycare service. That's clearly different than a church that operates in a manner where folks go and they attend church on Sunday, or they may attend some evening activities. Then having that type of business-oriented activity on a daily basis.
But an
That's a different impact.
8-foot fence
to-
is not gonna keep screaming kids or reduce the impact of screaming kids any more
I
than a
guess
6-foot fence.
I guess that depends on the situation of the property adjoining it. In other words, if it's to the rear of it and that happens to sit higher, you know what I mean? Or if it's a different situation of the property, if it's a corner lot, that the owner's on, like the one on, what is that? Near Crumpy's, that's the best I can say.
Oh, down there.
That takes almost up an entire block of area.
That would be most effective if everybody along that block would do the same thing. But if you have a situation where somebody has a section of 8-foot tall fence and right next door is 6-foot or no fence, the sound's gonna go around that.
So I get the sense that, well, first, is there, on the issue that Councilmember Metzner brought up, is everybody okay with staff looking at language to sort of mitigate that circumstance? And then on this particular language, I understand Councilmember Alshire's reservations. Is everyone else okay with the language that's been proposed? Okay.
And
Ms.
we can
Nye?
try to craft something to address Councilman Metzner's concern and bring it to the Planning Commission tomorrow, as the chairman, if he'll add it to the agenda.
There you
Because
go.
that'd be nice to get it in this package.
Yeah.
And
Thank you very much.
just to clarify, a hedgerow does not constitute a fence, right?
That's correct.
So you can plant a hedgerow as high as you want around your entire property.
There are certain limitations in front areas, depending on how close you are to intersections,
Right.
visibility issues.
But other than that, you're good to go.
I believe so.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we have reached that time again. And as Councilmember Metzner pointed out, this is our city administrator's last official meeting. And I thought we would end the meeting a little differently. So I thought we may have council and mayor comments first, and then allow Bruce to have the last word tonight. So I'll start over here on my right with Councilmember Metzner.
With regards to everything except Bruce, I don't have much to say. And then I had some
I'm gonna come and
things,
pick you up
had
and
some
take
things
you
to
for a
say
ride.
before, so I'll repeat some of the things I said again, and I'll be relatively brief, because Bruce doesn't like it, but it's good anyways. And I have the rare, maybe not unique, but almost unique opportunity to serve the entire 20 years with Bruce. I think Bruce came about 6 months before I did, and I can only say the city has been so much better to have Bruce here. It has not been an easy 20 years for a city administrator. A little historical perspective, we had no city administrator until 1981. After that election, there was not one in 81. That election caused a change to get a city administrator, and I think Bill Bruckner was our first city administrator, and then Steve Feller. And having never served with Steve, I have no comments except that his reputation was stellar, to say the least. Those who worked with Steve Feller pretty much indicated that there were shoes that were not going to be filled by anyone else. And he took a very substantial promotion when he left here. So not only did Bruce come in as the third city administrator, and there had only been a couple years worth of city administrators before Bruce, but he came in and, you know, it's like following in Joe Paterno or Bear Bryant's footsteps with staff and with elected officials, and now we got Bruce. I have difficulty handling human resources with one employee in my office. I cannot conceive of being in charge of the type of government that Bruce has been. Having said that, observing the last 20 years, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't think there was anything more difficult than dealing with the elected officials. Well, it's really the truth. It's very difficult to find groups of 5 that all agree on things. It's not that difficult to find 3. It's not that difficult sometimes to find 4, but frequently it's difficult to find more than 3, which means that you have almost a split between elected officials of pushing and pulling on an administrator of what they should be doing. And then you could have 3 council members and a mayor, and those of us who've been around for a long time know some of the difficulties that elected officials have caused. Most of us who have jobs will tell you it's not the employees that are the problem, but it's the employers that are the problem. So I think that's always been the most difficult thing. And I want to commend you, Bruce. It's been a wonderful 20 years working with you. And I'll end it the way I started it. The city of Hagerstown is a much better place for Bruce Zimmerman to have been here for 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nye.
Last week I brought up about bicycles and skateboards, and I thought that I was losing my mind, but I wasn't. I didn't know that I was the no vote on this, okay, when it came to that. I really think, and I've got to talk to the chief, there has got to be some type of enforcement. This has relaxed it too much, or we're not seeing. And I think that with the auxiliary, that's playing a key part. If we don't have the police that are there all the time, if there's another function, somebody has got to come to grips as to operating it not the way that it should be operated, okay? Also, there's been more and more people complaining about the profanity that is being used in that downtown area. And look, it's just common use around here. But there should certainly be something, I would think, on the books as far as that. And I don't know if there is or not. But again, if we have the people in place, I think that it should be looked at. When you have schools, and this is what the promoting thing is, and not that there are children who have trash mouths too. But when you do have schools and you have basically adults that when these are leaving out, and especially down here, and you have this four-letter word that is just an ordinary word for everybody anymore, that this is what's being spoken a lot. And I just think that there has to be something looked at
It's
this.
an enforcement issue.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, it really is. It is just not getting done. So short of, I'm not losing my mind, and that's another point that we need to bring out about the profanity, because it is. And it's sad, we've got a church right across the street. That's the kicker too. So, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Munson?
I would like to echo what Lou said about Bruce. I was in office, one office or another, the whole time Bruce was here. And he was either my administrator or my landlord to a large extent. And every experience I had with Bruce has always been very positive. And Bruce, we're going to miss you. City's going to miss you. There are going to be good times ahead, we know, but you have provided us extraordinarily good leadership for a long, long time. Thank you, and best wishes for your continued success and a good and happy life.
Thank you.
Mr. Alshire?
Couple of things. The first is, as a local government employee myself, I think that the key to longevity in such positions are remaining a certain degree of apolitical approach. And while Bruce and I don't always agree on the issues over the years, I think that remaining apolitical as an employee of local government, I think, is one of his best traits, and something I definitely have taken away in my own line of work. The second issue, and we even saw that even up to our agendas this week. I mean, just the email communications back and forth. The second thing is whoever you have maintaining the city golf course, keep them, because I've been to a number of different golf courses in the last several weeks, and there are few that look as good as ours do, or as good as ours does right now. So I think that's a good thing for the course. And the third is, had some continued conversations on the social services and sheltering facilities issue. We've had a number of articles, I don't ever want to be seen as sort of, this is my idea. In fact, I think Penny's been saying it a lot longer than anybody else. It's just folks don't like the way she says it, and so they don't want to hear it. But the reality is it's the truth, and we need to listen. And I think it took me a while to get to that point, but it's here, it's present, it's apparent, and we have not benefited greatly from its growth. I think it has changed its dynamic over the last decade. I think it has continued to have a declining impact, and the reality is, at least for me, I would never, ever, ever say that we do not need these services. What I would prefer to say is we need to make sure these services are first and foremost helping our citizens here in this community that need them first, and that they fit within the balance of our ability to serve our citizens and not to the detriment of our neighborhoods, because if our service related costs continue to escalate while our accessible base continues to decline, nobody will win in that scenario at the end of the day. And I think that's the message that we need to convey to these community partners. And with that, thank you, Bruce. We appreciate your service.
I forgot, can you bring up tri-world utility relief. The, oh my God, applications start Thursday of this week and will end on Friday. And then the choosing will be on Monday.
Okay.
I forgot all about it.
You just said it.
I know.
Thank you. Mr. Brubaker.
Well, I think I can say from experience and from my career, and more in county government than city government, but knowing something about city government, and then learning things with Bruce, that consummate professional city manager, the consummate, the definition. He's well respected by his peers around the state, by other people involved with municipalities. He's particularly good with the people he has brought and keeps on board and selected, which is such a large part of the job, and trying to constantly square circles with both people and money. It's an extremely difficult thing, but Bruce always maintains a veneer of calm and professional judgment. And even when you don't agree with Bruce, you still, want to come and work it out and figure it out. I think he did a particularly great job getting us through the 2008-2009 crash and bringing the city along and keeping us at a level much better than a lot of other municipalities were able to sustain. The other thing that I think Bruce is particularly good at is being proactive, thinking down the road, getting things introduced early, letting people know what was coming. And I often, bounce that off of my own failings, and I look, Bruce has done such a good job in all those aspects that I truly appreciate it. And while we don't always agree, and I don't think we had agreed on the outlook for the next couple of years, I hope that doesn't interfere with the many times we've talked and I think what had become a true friendship. So that's where I'll leave it. And thanks again for all your service.
Well, I would be remiss in not mentioning all the great things that have happened in Hagerstown the last week. Certainly, the Playhouse grand reopening under new ownership was very nice on Friday, followed by the Wine Down, which looked like a huge success in terms of the number of people who were out in the street and filling up the restaurants in downtown. And all of that was celebrate the Maryland Theater's 100th anniversary. The Splash Pad was fantastic. Once again, Rodney and Junior and their crew did a great job of executing that. And we had a moment of sunshine on Saturday afternoon, and so we cut the ribbon, and the kids were loving it, and some adults too. And then yesterday, we had a grand opening at the King Street Professional Center, first third grant recipient, and they did an outstanding job of renovating that building, and it's 90% occupied, and so we wish them all the success, and they had nothing but good things to say about the first third program, and so I've encouraged them all to email their council members to make sure that you guys keep funding it. I also wanted to mention that we did put out a press release today that we've hired a new fire chief, that he's accepted the position. Steve Lohr, who's coming to us from Montgomery County, has local ties to the community, has lived here, and is the former chief in Montgomery County, so we're looking forward to him getting started on June 29th. He was selected from a pool of 52 candidates who applied through a nationwide search. So I want to thank Karen and Bruce and all the rest of the crew. I know that there was a panel of internal stakeholders participating in the second round, 3 union members, captain, a battalion chief, administrative assistant, and 2 volunteer representatives as well. So it was a pretty thorough and professional process for selection, and very pleased with the result. And of course, I only want to echo everything, all the praises for Bruce, me being the most novice of all the elected officials. I think it's been a real honor and pleasure and privilege to have worked with Bruce, and I've learned a lot, and we've shared a lot of laughs together, and and off moments and really good conversations. It's been great to get to know Bruce over these last couple and a half years. And again, I would echo the sentiments that we're much better off today than we were 20 years ago as a result of his fine leadership. And two, Bruce, we're not going to do punch and cookies, and I know you don't like big celebrations, but I do want to invite department heads to come up and say a few words about you at this time, too. So just as the spirit moves you, any department heads want to come up?
How can I not start off without using a baseball analogy?
There you go.
As most of us are acutely aware, Bruce is a great student and fan of the game. And for the most part, our staff operated as a baseball club. Bruce was our manager. As players, we would sometimes miss a sign and be relegated to the dugout for an inning or two. But we always made it back to the playing field. It's been a great run. You've done some great work for us assisting in the utilities. We did the upgrades at Wilson, what we did at the NR facility for our wastewater, what we've done at electric through the years. It's been a great assistance to our customers. They're the ones that appreciate your leadership that's helped us go through. Enjoy your next adventure, whatever that may be.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else?
There you go.
I was listening to a radio show last week of David Letterman's staff, and they were kind of talking about his retirement, and they said, oh no, what are we going to do now that he's gone? And then they came to the realization that, hey, he deserves it. Hey, let's let the merits of what he did stand on its own merits, I guess. And I guess I feel that way about Bruce. All of us bring our hardest, most difficult problems to him. He always helped us in a very professional and encouraging way, and I just think he deserves it, and wish you the best, Bruce, and thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you.
I wrote something down, or otherwise, you guys know I'd sit up here for 35 minutes. On behalf of IT and support services, community and economic development, I'd like to thank Bruce for his 21 years of service to the city. Bruce's commitment to excellence, ethics, and fairness have been a model from which I myself have tried to model my career, as well as I'm sure that all of my colleagues have. There's certainly been many challenges in his career here, but he's met them with these same qualities of excellence, ethics, and fairness, and regardless of the outcome, has provided the seeds from which this city has grown. So, as my father-in-law said when he retired, it's nice to say that all my days from now on are going to be Saturdays. So as you begin to, as you start to enjoy your Saturdays, good luck to you, your family, and as a 30-year resident of the city of Hagerstown, I want to thank you for your service to us, the citizens, and the city, and the staff of the city.
Thanks, Scott.
I know all this makes Bruce uncomfortable, so.
I'm hanging in.
So I could go in a different direction, but I won't, so. I became a department head back in September 2000, so I've been working directly for Bruce for a long, long time. And I can say he's helped manage us and work with us through some very difficult situations, whether it be operational or employee or some of the things I've even said and done. So he's been very good to work with. I appreciate all you've done for me, for my career. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I didn't write anything down, and this will be short and sweet, but I know Bruce didn't want a whole lot of attention. He didn't want to party, and we respect that. But I do appreciate the opportunity to thank him publicly.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your service. And I don't know what your next adventure will be, and I know you'll discover that as you go, but whatever it is, I do wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce told me a quick story about meeting me for the first time here at City Hall, and at that time I was Officer Holtzman, and I came to handle something, and he has just a fantastic memory, which is something you want in a boss and something sometimes you don't want in a boss. Again, like what Eric just said, I appreciate the 25, 26 years now with the city, and Bruce has been a good friend of the police department. He's been there for me many times already in just a few years as a chief. When the chief is contemplating what the next move is, whether it's a serious crime or just a community issue, the phone call I make is to Bruce, and we talk it out, and he's always a great sounding board for that. And so, and Danny asked for some comments for us, and I'm just going to end with this. When I think about Bruce, I think about one of those chess players that can play multiple games at the same time just by going around from table to table and playing multiple people. That's what a city manager does, and he never forgets where he left off, and he's always looking ahead on every single chessboard at the same time. And so that's what I think about Bruce. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I don't have a choice on the last one, so I got to say. This is a very personal thing for me, but almost 3 years ago when I got my cancer diagnosis and found out what I was going to have done, I went to Bruce and offered to retire. And he very graciously said, just wait it out, see how it goes, and if you want to come back, the job's still yours. And I don't take that for granted. That really meant a lot to me, that I could leave on my own terms and not because I got sick. And not only do I want to thank Bruce, I want to thank the mayor and council for supporting me through that as well. So thank you very much, all of you.
Thanks, Chief. Donna would like me to tell you that your dedication to the citizens of Hagerstown will be remembered and appreciated for many years to come. Thank you for your guidance in creating programs designed to improve the quality of life for residents and visitors. And I wish you well as you retire, and thank you for your leadership and support. And we do have some parting gifts for you, Bruce.
Oh, my.
The first one of which, of course, don't forget to take your nameplate with you. It's all yours.
Also, Peggy's.
I believe this is from Human Resources
Okay.
for you. Feel free to open it now.
Am I supposed to open it now?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to see what it is.
After 20 years, I've learned Lou's kind of suggestions of when to wrap things up here, so I don't want to go too long with this. That's all right? Okay. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Something from Howard Miller. Okay. Ah, very nice. It's a beautiful clock. My name on it, in appreciation for your dedication and years of service to the city of Hagerstown. So thank you.
Also, we have a couple of framed prints here. One of the beautiful city park.
Very nice.
I'll put this up here.
Okay.
And another of the Hager House,
Oh,
so
those are
that you
great.
will always have lasting memories of these beautiful jewels of Hagerstown.
Beautiful.
And on behalf of the mayor and council, I want to present you with this plaque. In recognition of your service, presented in recognition of your outstanding accomplishments, dedication, and service to the city of Hagerstown and the citizens of our community, we congratulate you on the momentous occasion of your retirement and wish you continued success in your future endeavors.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
And now you get to have the last word.
All right, well, thank you. Well, I guess 21 years does give you a few things to think about. I'm sure I've given you all a few things to think about, hopefully good for the most part. I do want to say I've always felt honored and thankful to serve as a city administrator, to hold this position for the past 21 years. Certainly something that you can't take for granted. For me, working in the public service through a city government has been a goal, something of importance to me since I was in college. So this is a fulfilled dream for me. In my time here as city administrator, as I've worked with operations, as I've worked with staff, I've always emphasized that the community and our citizens come first. As much as we'd like to do things for the organization, for the departments, for our employees as individuals, and those are all important, they're not as important as the community. So the community clearly has to come first in any strong city government, and I think we've tried to reflect that in our work. My hope is that in our interactions with citizens and with the public, that our residents have seen that our staff operate with integrity, they operate with professionalism, that they respect all people, that they respect everyone, and that they operate with an undying commitment to making Hagerstown a better place. It has been said to me several times in the past few months that I've worked with a lot of different mayors and councils over the 21 years. I think you have to respect anyone who is willing to serve as an elected official on the city council and to serve as the mayor. My admiration goes out to all of you for that. I think mayors and councils face a lot of competing demands and interests, and you're on the front lines oftentimes without enough information, without enough time, and with a lot of pressure to reach difficult choices, difficult decisions. My goal has always been, and hopefully we've been able to do this, which is through staff, provide mayor and council useful, accurate information that benefits the mayor and council, that enables you to reach your decisions. Also, I hope you can see in the staff and in my work a commitment to implement your decisions and your actions, to do that successfully, and to follow through on the guidance and direction of the mayor and council. And once again, I thank you for your leadership for the community. Looking ahead, I believe what's key for Hagerstown is strong, effective community leadership, not just from the mayor and council or the city staff. I'm speaking of all members of the community. I think that we need leaders throughout the community that speak with confidence in Hagerstown, who speak with optimism for the future of the city, who are willing to demonstrate that optimism and confidence through not only their words but their actions. I think that we all need to recognize that Hagerstown's going to change. It is changing, and it's going to change in the future, and that there's opportunities in that change, and that change can serve Hagerstown for the better in the future. So I do need to talk about the staff a little bit. I appreciate your comments tonight. I appreciate your all being here. I appreciate some of you have put up with me for 21 years, and it's probably seemed like longer. But in regard to the staff, I believe, and I said this the other day, I believe we were always at our best when we were working on a large, significant project that we knew would have a visible, lasting benefit in the community. So my hope for the staff is that you can have many more of those projects in the future. I've always loved it when the city completes a project, some other form of accomplishment, and someone in the community says, I never thought you could do that. I think that's a reflection on the strength of the city government. I think that's a compliment to our staff that we can do those kind of projects. And I've always felt proud and thankful to say that I'm a member of the city staff. That's always felt really good to me. In closing, I think Hagerstown has so much that other communities wish they had. I think there's so many opportunities here and before us to make Hagerstown stronger and more vital. Opportunities for us to take actions that will serve the community well into the future. And I know you're committed to doing that, both as a mayor and council and the staff. And so that, I think, gives us all a reason to feel good about Hagerstown, to look forward to Hagerstown's future. And I wish you all well. Well in leading our community. I wish you well in ensuring that Hagerstown's future is bright for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be adjourned.
Okay.
Should we get a picture?